We had big YouTube influencer sales this week with 2 cars from Hoovies Garage, 1 from the Stradman, then we had some deals and a Lexus LFA, as well as a whole lot more. Stay tuned. We're going to follow along with the theme that we've had in the most recent videos, and we're going to start off with some rapid fire results. Then we're going to get into the detailed auctions, and then we're going to do some industry trends, which include some interesting and revealing numbers that are on various sites. In the rapid fire results, we have some deals, classics, as well as a whole lot more. Starting things off, we have this 1988 Isuzu iMark RS Turbo. These were a very interesting car. I remember these when I was going to school, and they were the second cousin to the Impulse back in the day. Really cool car. You can see this one kind of went for $8,400, which I think was a good buy. If you wanted this, it looked fantastic and it was a good car. Moving straight into the next car, we have this Honda S2000. This thing went for 25 grand, and if you look at the chart on this, I think that that was a good purchase, and someone's going to enjoy this car. Going into the next one, we're going to continue on our C8 voyage of talking about MSRP and ADM. So this one went for a little over 100 grand. That's 105,000 with fees. It's well over MSRP, which on this car was $93,000. And so somebody really paid a surplus on that. It continues our trend where we're talking about that people are paying a whole lot more for highly optioned vehicles. You can get a low option C8 Corvette for about $10,000 under, and this was about $10,000 over. So keep that in mind if you're looking for a C8 Corvette. Moving on to the next car, we have this really cool Benz SL500 Lorenzer. I looked into this a little bit, and I think this was a great looking car. It was a pretty decent deal with 31,000 miles on it, so kudos to the seller on this one. And for our last car, we have a Japanese market 98 Ferrari 550. I love these cars. There's a little bit of controversy around the way that they look, but I personally love them. Manual transmission. These cars are fantastic. This one went for 128 grand. It had some outstanding service items, and the person's going to need to do a little bit of work on that. But after they do that, they're going to have some equity in this car, and it'll be well worth about 150 grand at that point. Okay, starting things off on cars and bids, we're going to start off with Tyler Hoovie and his Buick Roadmaster. So Hoovie's Garage's Buick Roadmaster Estate Wagon. This was a really cool wagon. I thought it was cool. There seems to be a little bit of a demand for this vehicle out there, and in low mileage configuration, they'll go well over $30,000. This one sold for only $13,000, so I think that it was a tremendous deal at that. It's a modern Griswold family cruiser, if you will, and these things, like I said, have been getting decent money. This one at 13 grand was a heck of a deal, and I'm not sure if that's a difference between Bring a Trailer and Cars and Bids, or if there was some other factor in this. I was kind of surprised. I thought that this car was probably going to go for 25 grand, somewhere around there, and it went for half of that. All right, our second car on Cars and Bids is the Stradman's 97 Turbo Supra. Interesting thing about this car, I actually had the exact same year as this Supra, and I definitely wish I had this car back. Mine, like his, was a 6-speed swap from an auto, and I think I sold it for about $25,000 back in the late 2000s. Mine was 700 wheel horsepower on pump gas and meth injection, and was just amazing to drive. This one was just a little bit above stock horsepower from the way that they had it configured. To this day, I took my Supra faster than any other car that I have ever had, and I've had ones that had much higher top speeds. At any rate, this Supra was a nice specimen. It had 78,000 miles on it. It went for a great price, in my opinion, at $93,000. These prices just baffle me because I was dealing with them when they were around 25 grand or 20 grand, and that was for a nice car back then. So it's surprising, and I can't imagine having a Supra that's cost $93,000. We had a Supra sell a few months ago for $150,000 that was a manual swap from auto as well, but that thing had super low mileage on it. You can see it on this chart. This 93 grand, I think they got all the money on this, and I think anything over 80,000 was probably the reserve, and I think they're probably really happy with this sale. Next up, we have the Jean-Claude VanDamme Bentley Azure from 2001. This is another Hoovies Garage, so Tyler Hoover's car. Had a cool owner with Jean-Claude VanDamme. This was a car that Doug DeMuro did a full treatment. You know, he did his quirks and and features on it, and there was some definitely really interesting features on it. So the center stack on this, if you take a look at it, you can see all the buttons, and there's really good explanation from Doug DeMuro on his review of this car, because it has some British influence as well as Italian, and then interesting start button on it that doesn't match anything else that's in this car. And if you're more interested in that, take a look at it. This one sold for $42,000. You know, that's a 90% drop from what it was retail. I believe it sold originally somewhere around $400,000. It's a cool car, but maintenance is the real killer on these. It's a great, you know, 1 year, and then the next year you might spend $5,000 or $10,000 in maintenance on it. I doubt it'll drop any more in price, so that is a positive. All right, that does it with cars and bids for this week. If you're enjoying this content, please think about giving a little thumbs up to the video and subscribe to the channel. Every subscriber is a huge motivation to me, so I thank you for every single one of you that subscribes. Okay, now we're going to go into Bring a Trailer, and we have some real diversity and fun on the Bring a Trailer auctions this week. All right, we're going to start off Bring a Trailer with this 1991 928 S4 Porsche with only 32,000 miles on it. This was a great car. It sold for $59,000, as you can see here. This was a really interesting color combination. It's basically blue on blue. The interior is dark blue, as you can see. Was missing one critical thing to bring all the money, and that was a manual transmission. Even with the auto, this got into the high part of the range for 928s. There is a segment of 928s like the GTs and GTSs with low mileage that get into this upper part of the range that you see on the chart. This would have been great 928 S4 to get into and enjoy it a little bit and still have just a absolutely perfect specimen. This price was high, but the quality was as well. So let's face it, this car is basically a 32-year-old new car. So kudos to the buyer and the seller on this one. All right, now we're going to pick things up with a infamous and a highly controversial, to some degree, 2012 Lexus LFA. I say it's controversial because there's a never-ending debate of where this car sits in comparison with other supercars at this realm. Of no debate is how this engine sounds in this car, inside and outside. It's just an amazing engine, and it's an amazing car. These cars really struggled to sell when they were new, but I've seen a massive surge over the last like 5 years or so, and the special edition Nürburgring editions, those things get upwards of $1 million. You can see on the chart there was one that didn't sell around 1.2, and there was one that did sell at 1.6. Crazy money. Ones like this one are selling at 800, just below 800. This one's selling for 755. So they're very consistent at that. You look at the chart, it's like a straight line all the way across it. Haven't been a ton of sales, but there's been enough to pretty much set the precedent on these. One really amusing thing that I found was the peanut gallery and the comments on this sale. And you can go in there and look at them, but there was a whole bunch of people saying how this was an unbelievable deal and somebody stole this car and all this kind of stuff. But if you look at the sales prices on these, it is dead in line with all the other ones, just under $800,000. And so it got exactly what it should have got, in my opinion. I mean, it could have been another 20 grand more than this. This is a legendary car, and it has a special place in history, and it'll always be sought after. So kudos to the buyer and the seller on this one. All right, we have one more car on Bring a Trailer before we get into the trends, and that is a supercharged Godzilla-powered, how awesome is that, right? 1972 Ford F-350. So this truck is phenomenal. It was built by Gateway Bronco in Illinois, and it was originally unveiled at SEMA in Vegas in 2021. And if you look at the window sticker, I say window sticker, if you look at the sticker for this, they said that the base price was $300,000 and that it had $102,000 in options. I don't know where they come up with this, but nonetheless, that's what they said. It wasn't pesos, it was dollars. So $402,000 is what they said the MSRP on this truck was. You can see that it did not sell at $215,000. I think that they have a ton of money in it, and it is worth a whole lot. But this gets into that segment like iconic and icon, and I didn't know about Gateway Bronco, but apparently they're doing these super high-end builds. You look at the interior in this thing and the underside, and there is nothing that they did not touch on this truck. and it is all phenomenal. So I love the truck, and I think it's fantastic. I have a buddy that's a huge truck fan, and I sent this to him, and he is over the moon about it. But this money is just absolutely obscene at this point. And if you get a truck that's $200,000, $300,000, are you gonna actually use it like a truck? Probably not. I don't know. It's kind of a weird thing and a weird niche. And if you have big money, then get this truck and have an absolute ball in it and have fun, and it would be a ton of fun. All right, that does it for the auctions this week. Now we're going to get into the industry trends. We're going to cover some of the things that we've been covering the past couple weeks with some of the trends of the sales and no sales on the various sites. And then we're going to break it down into a little bit more detail just for a little bit more information and insight into what's selling and what isn't selling. Okay, Cars and Bids had 129 sales, 27 that did not sell, and that's about 21% non-sales. And if you remember last week, it was about 6% less. It was 15%. And so they've had a considerable increase in no sales. If you remember from last week's video, we were talking a little bit about the reason behind that was that there was a whole lot of cars that got sold after auction if they didn't meet reserve. And that's one thing that Cars and Bids publishes that Bring a Trailer doesn't mention. And I don't know if Bring a Trailer follows up with people to try to close a sale after it doesn't meet reserve. Even if they do, they don't post it onto the results. Anyhow, so this was a 6% increase in no sales for Cars and Bids. That's pretty considerable. On Bring a Trailer, there was 764 listings and 149 no sales. And that was 19% no sales. Last week it was about 21%, so they've dropped down quite a bit. So that represents an increase in sales of about 4%. So opposite of Cars and Bids. So they've increased the number of sales, and Cars and Bids has taken a considerable hit. And so I'm not sure if this is people negotiating harder to get better reserve prices or if it's just an influx. So we'll keep an eye on it and see how it develops. But nonetheless, it was pretty interesting. I also decided to dig into some of the numbers a little bit. And so with these 20-ish% of no sales, I wanted to see if there was a bigger portion of the no sales for a certain segment, whether that be 4x4s or American cars or British cars or race cars or whatever. So I dug into it a little bit on Bring a Trailer just because it's easy to get the metrics and you can do a little bit of calculations there. So I dug into that, and what I found was quite interesting. So Italian cars do quite well, the Ferraris and a few Fiats and Lamborghinis and those types of things. They usually in the last several months have been around 17% no sales. So that's lower no sales than the average. So they're doing quite well. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have a 27% no sales from British cars. So Astons and Rolls and Bentleys and things of this nature. And so those cars are not selling very well. And they have quite a high no sale. And then there's one other segment which is far worse than any other from a no sale perspective, and that's race cars. So race cars anywhere from 30 to 50%. I think this past week they were 50% no sales, so that's pretty sizable. We'll keep an eye on this going forward. Let me know if there's a segment out there that you're interested in or that you think that there's some kind of deviation from the norm, where it's around 20% no sales. I want to thank you for joining me. Please give me the thumbs up if you enjoyed this content and hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss anything in the future. And if there are auctions out there that you're looking for in this upcoming week, please send those over to me. I'm always looking for really interesting and amusing auctions. And I'll see you out there in the next one.